Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. We've been following with interest concerns related to school bonds and school construction. And of course, we've chatted with members of the North Carolina legislature over the issues of our financial status. And one topic we've talked with our guest tonight on numerous occasions, that being our bond rating in North Carolina. And joining us this evening, we have North Carolina Treasurer Dale Folwell to talk with us for a few minutes about an effort on the part of the state administration to expand our debt, and an organization which I'm going to lay claim to ignorance about until I read this story, the Debt Affordability Advisory Committee. And with that, Treasurer Folwell, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
Always a pleasure. Let's talk about this topic. And apparently there was a meeting recently in which this advisory committee wanted to consider, or was asked to consider, expanding the level of debt that North Carolina would engage in. So first off, tell me about this Debt Affordability Committee, and how does it work?
Well, the Debt Affordability Commission or Committee has been in place for over 15 years, and it's meant to provide a check and balance so that the people responsible for putting debt on the state of North Carolina, on the citizens of North Carolina, which is the state treasurer, that they give a report to both the governor and the General Assembly every year about what our debt capabilities are, just like all of your listeners have a certain debt capability. And so the reason that we send it to the governor and the General Assembly is the governor, as you know, produces a budget. The General Assembly produces a budget. Then whenever that budget's passed, it goes back to the governor. So that's something that by February 1st of every year.
Okay. We got some beeps there in your phone. That's all right. The real question then goes to the desire to expand the debt ceiling from right now apparently $2.3 billion to more than $6 billion. First question, looking at the story, triple the state's debt ceiling, $2.3 billion. Is that the amount of money that the state is currently indebted, or is that basically a sort of a red letter line that the state needs to pay attention to as it approaches?
Well, number one, the formula that was just approved last week and that was sent to the Governor and General Assembly is the same formula that we've been using over the last 2 years of our administration in the Treasury, and that formula is different in the mere fact that, as your listeners are so well educated, that we have started putting the unfunded pension and health care liabilities down as a debt of the state.
Right.
We think that these the pensioners in North Carolina expect to be paid these payments. We think that people who consume health care on the state health plan expect for their bills to be paid. So these massive unfunded liabilities are now part of the debt affordability study. So we submitted all that, and it becomes a guideline to keep North Carolina in a conservative operating posture as far as debt is concerned. And it's something the rating agencies have always applauded and actually held up the Debt Affordability Committee as an example of what other states should be doing in this regard.
Now, with that said, of course, we've talked on this on numerous occasions. You've complained and been very concerned with the absolute debt that North Carolina is facing were to be called upon to fulfill all of its commitments, and particularly in the area of pensions, but also health care. These debt ceilings that we're talking about, is this based on the amount of accrued debt in a calendar year as a result? And so what you're doing is you're looking forward to saying, in North Carolina's particular case, the accrued debt for the coming fiscal year, or by the way, is this biennial or is this annual? First question.
It's annual. It's looking 10 years out the windshield and says that our debt affordability is about $207 million per year. And now that gets adjusted because we don't issue debt on a dime. We issue debt when projects are presented to us that have been approved by the General Assembly. And sometimes those projects don't come in on the deadline. So we don't issue debt 1 second before we're ready to, but of course, when any time that these are this debt has been approved by the voters or told by the General Assembly that this is something we need to do, and we do it as expeditiously as possible. But sometimes the timing is off a little bit. So if you were thinking you were going to issue $300 million worth of debt this year, and that got put off by 6 months, for example, that would create some debt capability at the end of the line.
Got you. Now, one of the aspects of this, and let's talk about this in relationship to the responsibilities for our pension and health care, where our guest this afternoon, by the way, is North Carolina Treasurer Dale Folwell. By the way, Treasurer, what exactly is our current indebtedness in the pension plan and our health care? Just broad numbers.
Broad numbers, about 32 and on the health care, and about 14 on the pension, for a total of nearly $50 billion.
That, by the way, was with a B, correct? Billion?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure. I mean, 50 million when we've got a 21, billion, 21. What is our state budget this year? Is it going to be
23 billion?
23 billion. Okay. Wow. That's 2 times the state's budget right there. The thing that you are quoted as saying is that we've got to be prepared for tsunamis. And you said 2 biggest things coming at us financially are not acts of God. They're acts of man, especially health plan that has been not been properly funded for the last 40 years. And then you went on to say, and we're acknowledging this is a man-made tsunami that's coming at us in terms of health care and pension bills. That's the reason why I was wondering about the total capacity and responsibility, $56 billion total responsibility. Looking at that in relationship to the efforts presented to the Debt Affordability Advisory Committee, and that, of course, having to do with bond referendum and schools and things of this nature, that was noted that one of the members was concerned that North Carolina needs to spend money on new schools, new construction, and about amounting to about $18 billion, and that's $8 billion with a B, billion dollars in construction repair, and then another $17 billion in water and sewer needs. And then it noted $6 billion necessary for state government and university buildings. These are big numbers, Treasurer Folwell. Mm-hmm. How is the proposal for paying this off presented by those who are supporting it?
Well, they haven't presented any of those numbers about where you come up with $8 billion. Mm-hmm. What my job as state treasurer and to keep of the public purse is to tell them, how much capacity we have.
Right.
And, the question that I get from your listeners who see me and who have heard me on the show, the question I get across North Carolina that I can always depend on, even when I was speaking in Durham yesterday, is I thought the lottery was supposed to take care of that.
Right. Yeah,
and
schools.
The fact is, I was sitting on the floor of the House as a member of the House of Representatives when the lottery was passed, and 40% of the lottery was supposed to go to public school construction. Mm-hmm. That happened for just a few years, and then the lottery proceeds went down, and that's why we don't have public school construction money.
Now, of course, we're looking at the need for constructing schools, and I know that there's a growing debate. I say, a discussion, and I think it will turn into a debate on whether or not North Carolina should pass yet again another bond referendum, or as the legislature has also proposed, members of the Republican leadership particularly, that we do as a pay-as-you-go situation, thereby avoiding debt. States, of course, have been very cavalier in developing debt structure. These you take those debt structures and you compound them with already existing responsibilities, pension funds, and health care, let alone the normal operations of the state. It's very easy, it strikes me, Treasurer Folwell, that states can be lulled into a state of complacency, only to discover one day, as we have seen in the state of Illinois, New York, California, the state can't afford it. And it's too late once it's a bond. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct. And that's why when I was going through the little example about the lottery, if you restore the lottery proceeds, the profit from the lottery, if you restore it back to its original purpose in the original law of 40% of the lottery profit is supposed to go to public school construction, you have hundreds of millions of dollars available for school construction without going into debt.
And by the way, I want to make note of this. Three directors voted in favor of expanding the debt, but one of them being State Auditor Beth Wood, apparently in the story that I read, noted she was very upset that we had gotten ourselves in this situation and, quite frankly, was not really enthusiastic about expanding the bond debt indebtedness of the state, but felt that the severity was such that we had to move on it anyhow. This goes to your point a few moments ago. If we maintain our plans appropriately, we don't have to go back to these emergency calls. Am I correct on that?
Well, exactly. And I'm on several boards with Auditor Beth Wood, including a council of state. And, she and I all set each other's vote this morning.
Really?
This afternoon, and I voted for the same thing. And I always appreciate her perspective on issues.
Well, she is, I think, cognizant of the fact that it's a matter of not fulfilling on previous structures and expectations and promises, if you will. With that, Treasurer, what is the future of the committee's report? Will the governor accede to this, or does he just take it in advisory capacity and then does his own thing? And I'm assuming, what will the legislature, do you think, take as far as a result of this report?
Well, both the governor and the legislature can take this report and use it as a guideline, as previous governors and legislatures have done, or they can exceed the debt affordability of what the committee recommended. But, this committee on it has some fantastic board members, but in addition to that, Secretary of Revenue, the Director of the Budget, who works for the governor, the State Auditor is on this board. So it's very important to realize that this is a board of people. We have some great citizens on the board also who understand debt and finance, but it's very important that we use this as a guideline. We didn't get into these problems overnight, and we're not going to get out of them overnight, but we have to recognize them and address them.
One step at a time. Our guest this afternoon, North Carolina Treasurer Dale Folwell, and as always, Treasurer Folwell, thank you very much for being with us this evening here on Viewpoints. The topic, state debt. We're going to be hearing, of course, about this, and, of course, national debt here later this evening related to the State of the Union address. You're listening to Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240.